breakdown and predictions. This week we got a pretty interesting card. I think we got a card that has a lot of potential upsets and pretty good from a betting perspective. I got quite a few bets already for this card, like 9 or 10, I believe. So pretty confident, and I'm feeling good about this year so far, man. Every week this year we've been profitable on Patreon on our bets. So looking to keep that going and feel like we have some good momentum right now. Reading fights pretty good. So if we can keep it going for the rest of the year, that's going to be the goal, and definitely looking forward to breaking down this card. But go over to patreon.com/prediction check it out. Check out the bets. Check out the other content that I got on there. Going to be putting out other bets for other fight promotions like I have all year this week, and have potentially more bets for UFC and already the bets that I just talked about previously. So definitely worth going over there. And then outside of that, hit the like button, guys. Let's try to get as many likes as possible. Put some comments down below. Let's get some interaction on this video. But let's get in this first fight of the night right here. Daniel Marcos taking on Arichi Lang. And Marcos around a -200 favorite. I think he's a little bit higher than that now. And Arichi Lang coming back at like +200 at this point, I believe. So I agree with the line. I personally think that Marcos is just a little bit more skillful here. You look at Arichi Lang, he's a good athlete. He comes forward, he throws a lot of leg kicks. He likes to try to throw pull counters at times, and then he'll work his body hooks, like left hook to the body to right cross to the head combos. But to me, I feel like he doesn't have the best defense, and Marcos can just light him up. I think Marcos is a really skillful striker where he's good at working off the front foot or the back foot. He has good distance manipulation. He works the jab. He works pull twos. He has good kicks. I think that his kicks, his knees, that's a big differentiator between him and Arichi Lang. I don't feel like Arichi Lang has that ability with the lower half that Marcos does. And Marcos, to me, just has the better movement, better defense, better fight IQ. I don't really see wrestling, grappling playing a factor in this fight. Marcos has really good takedown defense, so if Arichi Lang does go for takedowns, I don't think he's going to be successful. But you look at Arichi Lang fighting opponents that have good distance control and can kind of counter you off the back foot or counter you as you come inside. With fights like when he fought Jeff Molina, he really struggled in that fight. He got lit up. He got dropped multiple times. You look at the fight with Amin Zahabi, he got caught coming in. He got knocked out. So I think Arichi Lang's a durable guy. I think he's going to come forward and be a dog in there. But ultimately, I just feel like Daniel Marcos, people are kind of down on him about his last fight, but Davey Grant's a really good fighter. I feel like he's more dangerous and kind of has more wild attacks that you're not going to want to be as high volume or in the fire with Davey Grant as a guy with Arichi Lang, where you kind of know a little bit more of what he's going to throw. He's not quite as wild and explosive. So I think that Marcos is going to be able to go in here and either catch Arichi Lang coming in and knock him out early with something sweet like a knee or a really nice, perfectly timed punch, or win a clean decision. So Daniel Marcos for me is going to be the prediction, and I think he's going to get the victory. We got Hyder Amil. He's going to be taking on Fernie Garcia. Interesting fight here. I mean, it's short notice matchup for Hyder Amil. He had a couple opponents pull out on him, so he's had some issues getting his first opponent for the UFC, but thankfully they've gotten him a fight on this date. 33 years old, so Hyder, I mean, making his UFC debut at 33, has to win here, and obviously he's going to be wanting to try to get some fights in back-to-back and maybe get into some higher-level competition. But first fight, he's going to have to take out Fernie Garcia, who's moving up a weight class, taking this fight on like 5 days' notice. I don't know if the UFC gave him a new contract or potentially he feels, you know, with 3 straight losses in the UFC, he's in a spot where he has to take this fight to potentially get another one. But that sketches me out a little bit. Like, I hope he's in good shape, taking the fight for the right reasons. But if he is, I think he has a chance to win because I'm just not super high on Hyder Amil. Hyder Amil is a tough guy. He comes in good shape, but I feel like he doesn't really pace himself the greatest. Like, he really pushes super hard in the first round, goes out there and throwing bombs to the wall, trying to knock you out, and really doesn't have the most technical striking, but really just tries to get in your face, make it a war, break you, and then eventually he'll either finish you or he'll kind of beat you down by decision. And he isn't really the most technical guy. Like, he can get caught coming in with punches. He can get caught with big elbows and strikes like that. He definitely has a good chin and a great will to win. But as you light him up, he gets even more and more sloppy. And even though, like I said, I feel like he has good conditioning, because of the pace that he sets early, he does tend to slow down a little bit as fights go on, even though he can push through fatigue and he's a really tough guy. And his wrestling, his grappling, I mean, seems like he has bad wrestling, but he's good at creating scrambles, super strong, and can kind of either work his way to top position where he has good ground and pound, or can kind of scramble back up to his feet. And I think, though, eventually someone's just going to take him down and dominate him. Probably most wrestlers that he faces at our UFC level have that capability. With Fernie, Fernie Garcia, he's a decent boxer who I believe has fought really hard competition in the UFC, so he hasn't really shown his exact level, but he does probably have the wrestling advantage. It's just with the size, with the short notice factor. Is Fernie really going to be able to come in here and wrestle for 3 rounds? I kind of find that a little bit hard to believe. And I think on the feet, even though Fernie probably has the technicality edge, he has a good lead hand attacks, like good jabs, good check hooks, decent counter striker. But I feel like he's not going to have that power to impact Amil and stop Amil from coming forward and making it kind of that crazy fight. And I don't think he's going to have the cardio to take advantage late if Amil slows down, and I don't think he's going to have the cardio to wrestle for 3 rounds. So if this was a full camp Fernie, potentially this could be different. But with the current circumstances, I just feel as if Hyder Amil is going to be able to pressure here, probably defend a few takedowns, maybe get taken down, get back up, eat some big shots on Fernie, but take them. And I think once he starts landing big shots on Fernie, backing him up, I don't know if he'll finish him, but I think he'll win pretty dominantly here. So I wouldn't be surprised at a late finish or a decision win here for Hyder Amil. This is a tough one. I really have a difficult time making a prediction here, so not going to have a big breakdown and pretty much a pass for me. But Zach Pauga, he's taking on Bogdan Guskov. And for Zach Pauga, obviously he came in the UFC from the Ultimate Fighter at heavyweight, got knocked out by Mo Usman, then dropped down to 205. And with Bogdan Guskov, he came in the UFC on short notice his last fight, got thrown right into the Lion's Den where he had to fight a perennial top 15, top 10 guy in Volkan Oezdemir, and ended up getting dropped and submitted in that fight. So looking to get his first UFC win, whereas Pauga lost his last fight to Bukauskas, but it was a pretty close fight, and he has some wins in the UFC, so he's more experienced in that element. But style-wise, I mean, you look at Guskov, he is someone that's a marauder early. I mean, almost all his finishes are in the first round, and very athletic guy, hands down, likes to pressure and kind of slip and rip with the big punches. If he lands clean, he can knock you out, and he will push against the cage, go to take guys down. He can control them on top. I feel like he's a little bit underrated in that area, but he definitely has a questionable chin, and I don't think he likes getting in firefights. If you really push him, you can eat his punches and make it more of a war. You can kind of wilt in there. And if you can push the wrestling, his wrestling defense isn't good. He gets tired, and you can kind of beat him up in that area as well. So for Zach Pauga, that's what I would do. I would try to mix in the wrestling, try to shoot level changes. Like I've seen him do it in the past. He hasn't really done it recently. But if he really tries to wrestle in this fight, doesn't just push Guskov against the fence and do nothing, I think it'll be a little bit more effective. And on the feet, Pauga can compete. It's just, I feel like if he gets clipped, he could get knocked out. We saw that with the Usman fight. And I just feel like Guskov is the more dynamic guy. Ultimately, I'm going to go with Guskov. I'm going to say he wins in the first round. I just feel like Pauga, he's missing something on fight night. Like, he doesn't have that intensity. He doesn't push it. I feel like he could be better than he is. It's like he's skillful, but he leaves something to be desired. He doesn't have that killer instinct, maybe, or something. So I'm going to say Guskov gets the knockout in the first round, but a fight that I don't have a lot of interest in and don't really have a confident pick here. Matchup right here with Max Griffin taking on Jeremiah Wells. And I feel like Max Griffin, in recent fights, he's been showing the best performances of his career. Even though he's older in age, he went in there, fought tooth and nails with guys like Neil Magny, Tim Means. Even in his last fight where he fought a young guy and Michael Morales, a good prospect, he took the first round off of him and he was able to make it a competitive fight. So I feel like Max Griffin has been looking really good recently. It's just after that loss to Morales where he probably got really hyped up and he was really, I don't know if you could say confident, but he was in a great position where if he would have beat a young prospect like Michael Morales, an undefeated guy, he would have been given a top 15 opponent. So now it's just, is he going to be as up for this fight? Is he going to have the same motivation, the same performance? We're going to have to see. Hopefully he does, because Jeremiah Wells is going to be coming back off of a loss himself, and he's going to be looking to redeem himself, where Jeremiah Wells, he had a fight with Carlston Harris and didn't go his way. He ended up getting submitted in the third round in that fight. He had a lot of moments where he had Harris looking like he was a little bit hurt or maybe he was going to get the finish, but he could never capitalize, and then Harris ended up taking out Wells. And even Wells' fight before that with Matthew Semmelsberger, he got dropped multiple times. Kind of a controversial fight where it was damage versus control, where Wells had a lot of control time. Semmelsberger had multiple knockdowns, and Wells got the split decision. So with this fight, how these two guys match up, I mean, obviously they're both veterans. They both know how to pace themselves. I feel like Griffin and Wells both kind of slow down a little bit in the third round, but they both have pretty solid cardio, and they have different styles, though. I mean, Max Griffin, more of someone that likes to stick and move, try to time that right hand as you come in and really hurt you, and he has pretty good power, especially in that first round. Takedown defense on point, good speed, straight punches down the middle, and fairly evasive guy. He's also very durable. If it becomes a war, he's willing to bite down and make it a war. And he has lost fights where he's gotten dropped and hurt before, so his chin has kind of been tested a lot, but he usually holds up. He doesn't get finished very often. And he has been taken down in fights, but his takedown defense is pretty on point if you ask me. And in this fight with this matchup, you have to imagine his wrestling defense is going to be pretty solid. I mean, he's going to have been worked on it through his whole camp. And he's just going to be looking to time Jeremiah Wells' blitzes. I mean, Jeremiah Wells on the feet, that's really all he has. Even though he's a very explosive, dangerous guy, I'm not saying you can discount his striking entirely, but really with the striking for Jeremiah Wells is he's a shorter guy with the long arms, so that's a little bit deceptive, and then very explosive. He can close the distance quick and close the gap throwing really strong, heavy punches, and then either can catch you and knock you out, which we've seen him do, or uses that explosive entry to level change, take you down, and then he could just maul you on top. He has great top control. He could finish you when he can get to the back or a dominant position, and that's really his whole team over there at Renzo Gracie over there. They all have that same kind of style, so I feel like Jeremiah Wells, you know what he wants to do, and you know what Max Griffin's going to be trying to do. He's going to be trying to snipe him with the straight punches, just like we saw Matt Semmelsberger do, where Semmelsberger sat down Wells a couple times, and instead of just knocking him down, Griffin's going to be looking to capitalize and get the knockout. And with Jeremiah Wells, I think he's going to have some issues close in the distance on a guy like Max Griffin, man. Max Griffin's a veteran. He's going to be moving around. He's not going to be staying in front of Wells. He's not going to brawl with him. And I feel like Wells is going to have a little bit of an issue closing that gap. Straight punches definitely beat hooks and winging shots, so I think Griffin will land first. He has the reach advantage. And unless Griffin just gets tired out early from a couple takedowns, I think that he can maintain the pace a little bit better than Jeremiah Wells, especially if Wells can't implement his usual game plan because he's going to be taking damage. So I'm going to slightly lean towards Max Griffin to pick up the upset here. I just feel like he could use his evasive movement, use his straight punches, time Wells coming in and either knock him out or do damage, make Wells a little bit hesitant to blitz in. And I don't think Wells is just going to be able to blanket him for 3 rounds straight. If he does, then that's his path to victory. And then obviously he could catch Griffin and knock him out with 1 punch. But I'm going to say Max Griffin goes out there and gets the knockout himself. Taking on Marcin, Prachnio, and 2 veterans here. 2 guys that kind of have different contrasting styles. And personally, I'm leaning towards Devin Clark to win this fight. And I'm pretty confident that he's going to get the job done. You look at Prachnio, to me, he's kind of a first round or bust fighter in this matchup. Prachnio has been able to win some decisions against really low volume strikers, where he beat Khalil, where Khalil was kind of still going through his thing before he totally became the Khalil that we know now. And then he had that really shit win over William Knight, where they both kind of just stared at each other for 3 rounds, or Prachnio just picked him apart with leg kicks. But with the guy that's trying to wrestle him and grapple him, I don't see him lasting much more than 1 round with his cardio. Prachnio, 11 finishes in the first round, 12 finishes overall. So you look at his 16 wins, 11 of them came in round 1. So I think that's kind of his path to victory here. Prachnio, he throws some nice kicks. He'll attack the body, attack the head with kicks, attack the legs. And he also wings big overhands. He'll throw a decent left hook. His hands, to me, don't really cause a lot of danger, in my opinion. I mean, he just kind of wings big punches, where I feel like probably he's not going to land that on many educated strikers. It's more his kicks that are effective. But I feel like against Devin Clark, when you're facing a wrestler, maybe try to use knees or something like that. But if he's going to be throwing a lot of kicks, I think it's just going to be advantageous for Clark to be able to at least back him up against the cage or take him down. And Devin Clark in recent years has shown renewed toughness. He used to kind of quit on himself, but now it seems like you really have to do a lot of damage to the guy to get him out of there. And his wrestling is on point. I mean, the guy can really wrestle effectively. He's explosive. He throws big punches to get the takedowns. The striking is kind of not the greatest, but I feel like after the first round, you can compete on the field with Prachnio, because Prachnio will be tired and you'll be waiting for the takedown to come. And I feel like with the cage wrestling, with wrestling in general in the open, when Clark gets on top, I think in all those areas he's going to be dominant. I feel like he's going to get Prachnio tired by taking him down consistently, and I feel like he could finish him in these later rounds. So Devin Clark to me is the pick, and I think he's going to win via KO, TKO, or submission in the second or third. Next matchup, we got Loma Lookboonmee taking on Bruna, Brasil. 2 skilled girls here at 115. 115 is a pretty good division, man. I mean, it's deep. Both these girls, I feel like, are pretty solid. I don't think either of them are ranked. And matchup-wise, it should be pretty good. It's going to come down to how Loma Lookboonmee fights, in my opinion, in regards to how close the fight looks. Right now, Lookboonmee is a pretty significant favorite, and I think if she fights in a certain manner, she could maybe cover the line. But I think if she fights how she has traditionally in other fights, she could potentially make this a lot closer of a fight. But you look at how these girls match up, both of them, Bruna, Brasil, and Loma, they're both good strikers at distance. Bruna, Brasil obviously is going to have the advantage of the height and reach. He's going to be 5 inches taller, 4-inch reach advantage. So that's pretty significant. But they both kind of like to play that tag game on the outside, where they're pull countering, throwing a lot of kicks. I feel like Loma throws with more intention, with more power. But potentially, we saw, like in Loma's last fight with Elise Reed, for a little while there on the feet when Loma was on the outside, she was struggling a little bit with the range and the speed and combinations that Elise Reed was bringing. So if they stay at range like that and Bruna could keep the distance, move around, and throw a little bit higher volume, she could potentially pose some issues for Loma. But I think Loma, if she gets inside, starts to land, Bruna just has a lot of defensive deficiencies with her leaning back, leaving her chin exposed. And I think Loma could take advantage of those. And I think in the clinch, Bruna Brasil is underrated to me a little bit. I think that she does a decent job getting double underhooks, and her grappling isn't bad. But Loma is going to be a lot more physically strong, I believe, in the clinch. And I think she can dominate there. I think she can do damage there. And I think she can even get takedowns and do well on top. It's just with Brazil, if she does take down Brazil, Loma has to be really cognizant of the sweeps from Brazil and not allowing Brazil to get on top of her, because then she could be in a lot of danger. And Loma's still kind of green and novice on the ground. But Loma hasn't fought in a long time. I feel like she's a dedicated fighter. She's young, so she's going to be improving. So I expect her to have leveled up during the layoff. And I think that if she fights a little bit more aggressively here, engages the clinch a little bit more, maybe mixes in some takedowns, then I think she could win this fight fairly easily. So I'm going to go with Loma Lookboonmee, and I'll say she wins via decision. Next, we got a really short notice fight with Timothy Cuamba taking this fight just yesterday, I believe. So he's only going to have, 3-4 days notice for this fight. So really short amount of time to prep, and he's moving up a weight class, making his UFC debut. So it's a lot that he has to cram in this short period of time. But what's good for Cuamba is he did just fight last week. He fought Michael Stack. He got the win via head kick knockout in the second round. He didn't really take a lot of damage from the fight. I don't know how hard the training camp was, but didn't take a lot of damage in the fight. And Cuamba, had that win on the Contender Series, didn't get the contract. Now he's getting this real short notice opportunity. He just had his birthday a couple of days ago. So with the win in his MMA fight with his birthday, he probably did celebrate, and who knows what type of shape he's actually going to be in. But hopefully he didn't get that out of shape in, less than a week. But you're looking at his opponent here, Bolaji Oki. He was supposed to fight a couple different guys here. This is going to be like his third different opponent. So he's also getting some things to deal with coming into his UFC debut. He's not really getting to train for the opponent that he's going to be facing through his whole training camp. So that's difficult for him as well. He was going to fight Hadzovic, who was a striker too, but Cuamba has a lot more different of a striking style. So it's going to be interesting to see if Bolaji can adjust to that. But matchup-wise, I'm intrigued in this fight. I haven't seen a line yet on this fight, but I want to know what it opens at and what the odds are on Cuamba. Obviously, he's going to be very undersized in my opinion. I think that Oki's he's a pretty big guy even for 155, and obviously Cuamba normally fights at 145. But if you look at it from a skill perspective, I feel like Cuamba is the more skillful striker on the feet, and that's where they both mainly like to operate. Oki, he's really flashy, and he could kind of not deceive people because he is a great striker, but he could be really low volume, not do much the whole fight, where it's really unimpressive. And then when he explodes in and he lands his big combinations against the fence and crumbles his opponent, you forget about all that, and you just remember the finish, and you're kind of enthralled by him, even though he didn't do a lot for a majority of the fight. So he's one of those guys where Timothy Cuamba, he's a very fast finesse striker, where he's going to be looking to stick and move, pull counter you, and make you chase him, and then touch you with strikes, and then get you frustrated, and then try to land something big. Landed, obviously, a really nice head kick his last fight, and he trains at Extreme Couture, so wrestling defense has improved pretty significantly. He still can get taken down and grind it out, I believe, against the right opponent. But Oki, I've seen him take down certain guys, but I think if he ends up trying to wrestle and do all that with Cuamba, it's probably going to be because he's losing the fight. So that'll be an indicator. But Cuamba just has to stick and move, avoid the power, not try to knock Oki out or throw big shots, because I don't know if he's going to be able to hurt him necessarily. Oki's a really big, durable guy at 155. So just worry about finesse, sticking and moving, using your technique, because Oki can be a little bit flat-footed. He can be a little bit low volume at range. Where Oki really shines and where he looks like a world beater is when he can back you up near the fence. He'll throw knees to the body, punches to the body, punches up top, really nice combinations. His elite speed. And when he goes, and he can really hurt you, can land clean, and he's also pretty good cardio. He has good durability. So he's someone that if you slow down on him and he could start to back you up and get you in the spots where he wants and he can explode, he could really start to do damage and get you out of there. And he also has the knockout power to take you out early or take you out late. I do think that Oki, he doesn't have a lot of experience in longer fights though. And I don't know exactly if he'll hold up 100%. Like, certain fights I've seen him get tired, but it's because he was using a lot of wrestling. If it's a straight up striking fight, I could see him potentially keeping that pace. It's just something we got to see. I think he's obviously going to be in the best shape he's ever been coming into his UFC debut. This is a tough one for me. I feel like Cuamba is definitely a live underdog. It's just the fact that he's going to be significantly smaller, the short notice aspect of it and all that, that's really throwing me off predicting him as the winner just straight up. So I'm going to say Oki finds the knockout shot at some point during the fight, maybe first, second round. But I feel like this could be a competitive fight, and it could be an upset victory here for Cuamba potentially. But Oki looks like a guy that potentially could get a lot better. He's very skillful. He has the ability to shut the lights out. So I don't really want to predict a guy to beat him that's only had like 2 or 3 days of a mindset to fight against. So I'm going to say Oki gets the job done and wins this one via knockout. Prelims here, we got Trevin Giles taking on Carlos Prates. And it seems like Trevin Giles has became this guy now. They're testing him against all these guys that they think could potentially be elite prospects. And they're saying, hey, if you could beat Trevin Giles, then we're going to kind of catapult you up the rankings because we think Trevin Giles is pretty good, but we don't really, I don't know what it is. Maybe they don't want to build Trevin Giles. They don't think that he has a big future in the sport. I mean, he's a guy that's dropped 2 weight classes, that's been kind of a journeyman. So I think they kind of like him in this role here. And Trevin Giles, he's kind of one of these guys where if he loses, he's getting finished. If he wins, he's normally going to win pretty dominantly. You know, he's had a couple of these close fights, but most of the time when he wins, like, I guess his fight with Kosi was close, but he usually will jab guys up. He could defend the takedowns well and kind of win that way. But when he loses, he'll kind of start well, unravel, and then get finished. And he's been choked a lot. He seems like he leaves his neck out there when he goes for takedowns. And his chin is also a little bit questionable at this point in his career. But he's going to find a guy in Carlos Prates that looks really, really good on the Contender Series. He was able to go in there, fight a guy in Mitch Ramirez who was undefeated, who had some hype around him and really just kind of clowned him and got the finish in that fight. And looked like he was a really good striker, really technical, someone that had really good counter-striking. He has a lot of fights in Muay Thai and kickboxing, and he has a ton of knockout wins, so he's good at finding the chin and putting you out. His knees, elbows, and danger strikes like that are on point. And his takedown defense looks pretty good. And he's also training with the Fighting Nerds, so you know that he's going to have good grappling coaches and grappling partners to help him on the ground. Trevin Giles, I imagine, is maybe going to try to get takedowns here. I feel like on the feet, he's going to struggle. He could maybe land the jab. I've never really seen Prates fight someone with a really good fast jab. He does hold his hands low. That could potentially give Prates some issues, but I just feel like Prates, if he's had, it's hard to find a lot of his striking fights, kickboxing fights, Muay Thai fights. I try to find some of them and watch a couple of them, but if he's had all these fights in that discipline, you know that he's fought someone with a real strong jab and a longer guy, things like that. So I feel like he's going to be able to deal with that and probably be able to outstrike Giles and find that chin. And Giles is probably going to go to the wrestling. So I think the chokes are going to potentially be there for Prates. Hopefully Prates has been training a lot of front chokes. And I think Prates is going to eventually probably be able to get the finish in this one. I just think he'll be able to get Giles out of there at some point in the fight. And I'm going to go with Carlos Prates here to win in the second round. Next fight, we got a striker versus grappler matchup with Rodolfo Vieira taking on Armen Petrosyan. Rodolfo Vieira, obviously 4-time world champion in Jiu-Jitsu. Armen Petrosyan, long kickboxer. And that's how they're going to really stylistically clash in this fight. I mean, we're going to see who's going to be able to implement their game plan. I feel like Rodolfo Vieira, his last fight was really bad, man. It looked like he regressed a little bit in that fight. Went in there with, my opinion, one of the lesser guys in the division who I guess has good wrestling. Maybe that's what threw him off. But Vieira got dropped early, and eventually he was able to sweep when he got dropped, and Bruna went on top of him, and he took the back, and he ended up getting the finish, or I think it was an arm triangle. It was one of the two. He ended up getting on top and submitting him somehow or another. And but Vieira, obviously, if he can get you connected on the ground, the guy's a beast. I mean, if he can get attached to you, if he can get to the back, if he can get to a dominant position, I mean, you see how big he is for the weight. And then he has that world-class technique on the ground as well, so he could just finish you with many different ways. And he has gotten tired going for finishes and kind of gassed himself out. Well, we've seen at this point that Anthony Hernandez is no joke. I mean, that guy is incredible cardio, and he was able to just outlast Vieira there and ended up submitting him. But Vieira, if he can get to the clinch or get in on the legs with his double leg, I think he can take Petrosyan down potentially. And we've seen other opponents of Petrosyan get to the back or get into these positions where if Vieira gets there, he could potentially capitalize and get the finish. So Petrosyan has to have his wrestling defense even more on point, has to be even sharper with his submission defense if he does get taken down. But on the feet, Vieira has a good jab, and I feel like he's improved his composure a little bit. But like I said, he regressed a little bit to me in the stand-up in his last fight. And Petrosyan, he isn't a super powerful striker, but he's a good point fighter. He's someone that works the jab. He'll try to pull you into some straight punches. Throws a lot of kicks. He could throw a lot of variety of different kicks. He could throw kicks with both legs, the lead leg and the rear leg. And he has good footwork. He can move around well, pretty evasive. His cardio's on point. And he's shown that even though his takedown defense isn't that great, he could scramble back up to his feet if he gives the back, even when he gave the back to good grapplers like Gregory Rodrigues, like Kyle Barallo, he was able to stay safe. So I think that he has proven certain things in the grappling. It's just if he gets taken down or gives his back someone like Vieira at that level, is it going to be the same outcome? I don't really know. I could see Petrosyan maybe getting finished against Vieira if he allows those same positions to happen. So Petrosyan just has to be sharp. He has to be on point, has to control the distance, be moving a lot, try to avoid grappling or wrestling at all costs, and get Vieira tired, beat him up, and then knock him out. So I think Petrosyan has that capability, and I'm going to lean towards Petrosyan getting the victory. It's just I think that there is certain scenarios where Vieira can go in there and get the submission as well. So I like this fight. I think that stylistically both guys have passed to victory, but I'm going to go with Armen Petrosyan to get the win. Michael Johnson versus Darrius Flowers. Don't got a lot to say about this fight. To me, it's a very volatile, pretty unpredictable fight. You got Michael Johnson, who's a good vet. He's someone that's been very up and down in his UFC career. He has more losses than he has wins, but he's been fighting the creme de la creme, the top of the top at 155, and he's definitely shown his skills on more than one occasion. And when he performs and he's at his best, he can go out there and beat the top of the top. It's just now he's getting older. He's coming off another brutal, absolutely devastating knockout loss where who knows how he's going to come back from that. Is he going to be tentative? Is he going to have a chin at all anymore? We don't really know. We're going to have to wait and see. But his opponent, Darrius Flowers, coming in for his second UFC fight. Very weird career where he wasn't taking his career serious for the longest time. He was fighting way out of his weight class. He was taking these boxing matches where I don't know if he was just taking them to get paid or what he was doing, but he was 1-10 in boxing, so was really just losing as an opponent in boxing, and then taking these 205 fights and 190, 200-pound catchweight fights, and then more recently, just in the last few years, he decided to take his career more serious. He dropped to 185, I believe, then 170, and started to get some wins. He got that win on the Contender Series, got into the UFC. He fought Jake Matthews on short notice, and that obviously was a really bad performance, at least if you ask me, where he kind of got tired after the first 5 minutes, but a lot of that could be contributed to the lack of preparation. And then now Flowers is dropping even more to 155, where I don't believe he's ever fought at 155 in his career, so it's going to be the first time that he's at this weight. We're going to see if he can make it properly, how he's going to look. Is his cardio going to be impacted by the weight cut, his chin, things like that. But skill-wise, I feel like Michael Johnson is on another level. I mean, you should have a significant speed advantage, southpaw boxing, just box up Darius Flowers. He probably could even take Flowers down if he wants to, but I don't think Johnson is going to go that route. But Darius Flowers does bring some things that Johnson doesn't like. Like, Johnson isn't the greatest dealing with guys that just come forward, head movement, forward pressure, and just wing overhands. Like, we saw even Clay Guida, who's not necessarily known for striking, have a lot of success in the stand-up. I think he even knocked down Michael Johnson with some looping wild overhand. So Flowers does have that element where he'll come in kind of Mike Tyson style, bob and weave, try to throw those big punches over the top. And if he connects, I think he could definitely knock out Michael Johnson. We've seen his chin, but I don't think Flowers could take Johnson down, really. I would be surprised. If he does take him down, I mean, I don't think he's going to be able to do much on the ground. And I don't trust Flowers' cardio either. Cardio for Flowers, his last fight was like 5 minutes. Also, if you look at experience, I mean, Flowers hasn't really beaten anybody. So ultimately, I'm going to say MJ gets the win here via decision. He could finish him, especially if Flowers totally gasses. But I think Flowers is going to come in a little bit more motivated to not get finished, even if he loses because of his last performance. And Michael Johnson only has like one finish since freaking Trump became president in 2016. So it's like he's probably not going to get a finish. So I think Michael Johnson via decision is going to be the pick for me. That I'm having a difficult time predicting with Brad Tavares versus Gregory Rodrigues. If I'm looking at it from a skill perspective, I feel like Tavares has him beat here. I think Tavares is the better technical striker. I think his leg kicks could be impactful here. I think his jab could be impactful. And if he could kind of just use his finesse to really just technical striking to beat up Rodrigues, I think he could definitely be effective. And I feel like he's going to be able to keep the volume up. He has the pacing. He's a veteran where he's not going to get tired. But I just don't really trust his chin, man. I mean, there's something about his chin that I don't trust at this point for Brad Tavares. I feel like his takedown defense, all that is going to hold up. I don't even think Rodrigues is going to really try to take him down too much. Rodrigues usually just tries to go in there and brawl anyways. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, you look at Gregory, I feel like he's pressure forward, very tough guy, but he also has a little bit of a questionable chin himself, and he's willing to eat shots to get in and throw these powerful strikes. When he lands, he has big power, and I feel like he probably has a better kicking game to the body and the head. I think Brad has better leg kicks, but Gregory's just going to have to get inside where he can land and detonate on Tavares, and I think if he can get there, he could do a lot of damage and get Tavares out of there, potentially even. But if Tavares could just pick him apart from the outside, then Tavares could easily win this fight. So I feel like it's a coin flip. So if you're looking at it from that perspective, and then you look at the odds, and Tavares is a pretty significant underdog, I think Tavares is the side if you were to bet on the fight. But you're just going to be sweating it, in my opinion, just because I think that if he gets clipped by Rodrigues, we could see him go out. So it's in my opinion, a very close, hard fight to predict. And I'm gonna pick Rodrigues. I'll say he wins via knockout in the first round. Between Ihor Potieria and Robert Brisic, short notice fight. Ihor Potieria, he's fought his whole career at 205, and now he's taking this fight apparently at 185 on like a week's notice. So I'm not sure why he was fighting at 205 if he could make 185 in a week. I mean, it seems like it was a bad decision, but maybe it's a catch weight that we don't know about, or maybe Ihor's going to miss weight. I don't really know, but kind of surprised that they made this fight 185 if it does stay that way. But stylistically, I mean, this should be an entertaining fight. I think it's going to be a fight that ends inside the distance most likely, and it's really juiced to be that way in terms of the odds. But you look at how these guys match up. I mean, Ihor Potieria, he's had a few UFC fights already. He hasn't really had a lot of success. He got the win over Shogun, but besides that, he's lost all three of his other UFC fights. And this can be the debut in the UFC for Robert Brisic. But Potieria, he's still pretty young. I mean, only 27. And I do think that he's not the worst. Like, he's a dangerous striker. He just Offensively, he's good, but defensively, he leaves a ton of openings to be hit, to be countered. And I feel like his chin isn't the greatest. Like, he can get clipped, countered, get hurt. And it's maybe not even his chin isn't good. It's just he gets hit so clean over and over that not many people are going to be able to take that. And sometimes the ref will just jump it and stop it, standing TKOs. But Bolteria throws a lot of wild strikes out there, and he's dangerous. And when you look at Robert Brisic, he's a weird fighter because the beginning of his career, he was fighting at 170. It didn't seem like he had a lot of punching power. It didn't seem like he had a great chin. Like, I've seen him get knocked out, get dropped, and hurt. But he has good boxing, and he's always had good fundamental boxing. And then he moved up, and his power just came out of nowhere, where he's had this crazy power. He's been able to knock guys out with one punch, and he's been connecting flush and just putting guys out. And his technique is definitely a lot crisper and cleaner than Bolteria. It's just Bolteria with his wild style could catch Brisic on the chin, and I don't really trust Brisic's chin that much. And a lot of people that beat Bolteria are guys that are wrestlers that will try to take him down and control him, and Brisic isn't going to do that. He's going to be looking to pressure and box, but ultimately, I have to pick Brisic. I mean, I feel like he's probably going to be able to get the knockout here, especially with the circumstances for Bolteria. But it's just a volatile fight because I think Brisic's chin is a little bit questionable. Between two vets with Dan Ige and Andre Fili throwing down, I feel like this is a fight that has been talked about for a while, and it's finally going to happen. I mean, two guys that are kind of like bottom of the top 15, maybe right outside the top 15 type of fighters. And they've been that way for a lot of years. And now they're finally going to lock horns here. So it's an interesting dynamic, too. I mean, we got a tall, long guy that likes to snipe people on the outside, throw head kicks, throw pull counters. And then we got a guy in Dan Ige that wants to get on the inside, let his big hooks off, throw power, and try to knock you out. And in terms of the wrestling and the grappling, I feel like Fili probably has the wrestling advantage. I mean, with that blast double, it's just if Ige can shut the wrestling down, make it more of a clinch battle, I think he's more physical. And then if Fili gets on top, I don't necessarily think he's going to be able to control Ige, whereas I think if Ige gets on top, he can do damage and control. So I feel like the grappling probably goes to Ige. And in the stand-up, Fili is more dynamic. He's going to be looking to keep Ige on the outside with his long strikes, with his speed, with his footwork, with his movement, with his length advantage. But Ige has good footwork. He's good at working his way inside. And I think when he does, he could land on Fili. And I haven't liked Fili's chin recently, man. The guy's been getting hit, and every time he gets hit, it seems like he goes down really hard. Like, he doesn't really have that durability anymore. He could bounce back and recover quick. Even though he has been knocked out, he's also had fights where he got rocked and came back and won. But I just don't like the amount of times that he's been getting hurt on the feet in these recent fights. And I feel like Ige is going to be able to get on the inside, be the more durable guy, take a couple shots if he has to, and land on Fili. And I feel like when he does, he'll be able to hurt Fili. So even if he doesn't get Fili out of there, I think he'll be able to do the more damage. And I think he has a good chance to knock Fili out. And I don't think that Fili could stall the fight by holding him down like Fili has done other guys. So it's going to have to be a striking fight. And Fili could have success against Ige. I just don't think that he's going to be able to hurt Ige, and I don't think that he's going to be flawless for the full fight, where Ige is not going to be able to get on the inside and land the more damaging shots. So give me Dan Ige to win this matchup here. We got Jack Hermansson. He's taking on Joe Pyfer. And good fight here. I mean, Jack Hermansson, he's been kind of top 10 gatekeeper for a little bit now. He had the run where he beat Jacare back in the day, and he was close to a title shot, but never really got there, and he hasn't been able to pick up a lot of wins against these higher level guys, so he's kind of moved into this gatekeeper role. And obviously Joe Pyfer, he's trying to break the door down. He's a hype train right now, someone that came in the UFC off the Contender Series a couple years ago and has been flawless so far, getting a lot of pretty nice knockout wins too. And this is definitely a big step up in competition. He fought Abdul Razak in his last fight, which was a step up from the opponents that he'd been fighting previously. But Abdul Razak is not Jack Hermansson. And we're going to see if Pyfer can step up in terms of competition and in terms of being in a 5-round fight, main event, all the eyes on him, everything like that. Whereas Hermansson has already had to deal with this, and he's already fought a lot of high-level guys. He has a lot of really good experience. So he has that advantage. He has 31 fights in comparison to 14 fights for Pyfer. I mean, that's a big edge there. But style-wise, you look at how these guys match up. Hermansson, he's a more mobile fighter. He likes to bounce in and out, use a lot of footwork, and mainly he just likes to throw the jab and a lot of leg kicks. And sometimes he'll throw body kicks, he'll throw front kicks to the body, he'll throw a big right hand, but not a big combination guy, not a big power guy. He doesn't have the greatest striking overall, in my opinion. I think the leg kicks could be a factor versus Pyfer. Pyfer doesn't seem to eat leg kicks the greatest, but one thing with Hermansson is he does sometimes throw these naked body kicks, and if he does that against Pyfer and gets countered, that could be an early night for him. So he just has to be a little bit better with setting up his kicks and just a little, maybe throw with a little more power on his punches to try to at least dissuade Pyfer a little bit from pressuring him and staying in his face. But Hermansson predominantly is a grappler. He has a decent double leg, and then he can chain wrestle against the cage. But his wrestling isn't elite, and he could struggle to take down guys with good takedown defense. I think he is the inferior wrestler in comparison to Pyfer. And if he can get on top of guys, his ground and pound is really, really high level. He has some of the better ground and pound in the sport, if you ask me, some of the better top pressure. And he's really good on top. So that's his best area. It's just if he can get there against Pyfer, which I think is going to be difficult. And for his takedown defense, I think he can be taken down, in my opinion. And I think Pyfer could maybe get a couple takedowns here if he really wants to. It's just one thing about Hermansson is he has a really good guillotine, dangerous front chokes in general. And Pyfer sometimes does leave his head out there, so he just has to be careful, Joe Pyfer, to not get guillotined by Hermansson. But on the feet for Joe Pyfer, he's a little bit more methodical, a little bit slower, and he loads up on his strikes, and he likes to use the jab as well, but he throws the big left hook, the big right hand, and he's not a big kicker, but when he can back you up against the fence and let go and land, he has concussive, big, crazy power. He's a big guy for the weight, very physical, and like I said, it doesn't seem like he takes leg kicks the best, and we really haven't seen him face a striker with the movement and footwork that's going to be trying to bounce around him like Hermansson, so we're going to see how he deals with that. But Hermansson historically hasn't dealt the best with big power punchers, so if Hermansson gets clipped by Pyfer a couple times, or Pyfer can just make the cage small, make Hermansson uncomfortable, I think he could force Hermansson into mistakes. And I also feel like Pyfer's going to have the wrestling advantage, so he's going to have the ability to take the fight where he wants it and shut down the offensive wrestling and grappling of Hermansson. So I think that that's a big advantage for him. And in terms of cardio, it's kind of hard to say. I mean, I don't necessarily know that Joe Pyfer can go 5 rounds. I don't even know he can go 3 rounds at a good pace. And with Hermansson, I know he can go all day cardio-wise. So I guess you give the advantage to Hermansson there on what we know, but potentially Pyfer could have the cardio, and he does look in good shape. And I do think that Hermansson's going to struggle to keep Pyfer off him with the power that he does bring, unless he can land a few leg kicks early that really damage Pyfer. Because if Pyfer can start to back him up and get him into the spots that he wants and connects, I think we're going to see Hermansson lack composure, look really flustered and ugly, which is bad for the judges. And I don't necessarily know that Pyfer's going to knock him out. I mean, I know all these people or not all these people, but people said he has like Francis Ngannou, he broke his record for power and all that. I mean, maybe it's true, but I don't know. I don't know if I buy that. I feel like Hermansson's going to be tough to finish early. I mean, it's possible, but I think Hermansson's going to be durable out there, and Pyfer's going to have to show that he can go a little bit longer in this fight. But ultimately, I just don't think Hermansson's going to bring that firepower on the feet to really dissuade Pyfer from pressuring him and getting in his face. And I think when Pyfer throws, it's going to be more impactful. And I think Pyfer can control the wrestling. So I'm going to go with Joe Pyfer. I'll say he wins via decision in this fight. And So there you have it, guys. It's the full card breakdown and predictions for UFC Vegas 86, UFC Fight Night Hermansson versus Pyfer. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you learned something. Hit the like button down below. Let's try to get over 200 likes. Put a comment. I would really appreciate it. As much traction and interaction on videos as I can get is the best. And, I'd really feel blessed for that. So really urging you guys to interact with the video. But besides that, man, in terms of the most confident pick in the party of the week, for my most confident pick, I'm going to go with Daniel Marcos. And for the party of the week, I'm going to go with Marcos and Devin Clark. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll be back soon. Check out Patreon, where I got a lot of bets for this UFC card right now. I've been killing it this year in terms of bets, and I'm feeling pretty confident about this card this week. So definitely go to patreon.com/HenryPredictingDrew, sign up, get involved in that action, and I'll talk to you guys later.